Next, unlikely alliances and controversy are once again front and centre on the EU referendum campaign trail as both sides make their pitch over the future of the UK. The Chancellor, George Osborne, criticised Boris Johnson for comparing the EU to Hitler's attempts to dominate Europe. Here's our political correspondent, Lewis Vaughan-Jones.
Boris Johnson is back out campaigning, but his message is being overshadowed by his own comments. At the weekend, he compared Hitler's attempt to unite Europe to the European Union.
The EU is a different proposition, but it fundamentally comes from that idea that you can unify Europe. And my problem with that is that it is not being done
wasn't
by
talking
consent.
about unifying Europe, though. He was talking about conquering Europe and wiping out half its population. It's not the same thing as unifying Europe, is it?
As I say, you persist in trying to drag the subject back to previous attempts to unify Europe. What I'm talking about is what is going on now, and it is deeply anti-democratic.
Campaigns often involve politicians doing things you don't expect. Today, it was the Chancellor having a go at being an air steward.
All aboard for Britain remaining in the European Union.
George Osborne, with his message to stay in the EU, he didn't point out the emergency exits. This lineup was a bit of a surprise this morning, but it was certainly very deliberate, right down to the colour of their ties. The yellow for Lib Dem Vince Cable, the red of Labour's Ed Balls, and the blue of the Conservative Chancellor. Three politicians who spent years disagreeing with each other, now all saying the same thing. It wasn't exactly subtle.
Leaving the EU is a one-way ticket to a poorer Britain.
To leave the EU now really is a one-way ticket to a poorer Britain.
The alternative is taking a one-way ticket to a poorer Britain.
Osborne was asked about Boris Johnson's comments on Hitler and the EU. He referred to a former head of the army who dismissed the comparison.
We had Lord Bramall, who is a field marshal in the British Army, who himself as a young man landed on the beaches of D-Day to fight and defend our country. And I think he said what needed to be said about Boris Johnson.
So this debate may be about issues and arguments, but the personalities are never far away.